Politicians are starting to sound like real estate agents.
I didn't know you sold real estate.
You didn't? We should talk more often.
It's because they need to bring this thing home, literally.
The Coalition has a comprehensive plan to help Australians realise their dream of owning their own home.
After weeks of dumping on Labor's home buyer scheme, the Coalition unveiled its own.
This will be a game changer for thousands of Australian families.
Under Morrison's plan, first home buyers who have saved a 5% deposit will be able to access up to 40% of their super, capped at $50,000. If the house is later sold, that money would have to be paid back into their super account along with a portion of the capital gains. Labor, unsurprisingly, came out swinging.
This is an attack on future savings. It's an attack on future generations.
I know Labor doesn't like this idea. They want to keep your money in someone else's control.
The response from the real estate industry has been muted, and the super industry is not super impressed.
This is not the first time that the Morrison government has treated superannuation as a piggy bank. Giving people access to more money to enter the market isn't what is going to resolve this issue.
The Coalition says this will get more people into homes, but critics say it's robbing people of their future nest egg, and the scheme will just drive house prices up further. A concern confirmed today by Morrison's own superannuation minister.
We know that people will probably bring forward some of their decisions to buy a house earlier.
But have you modelled it?
For that reason, it will probably push housing prices up temporarily.
There's nothing in this proposal really to deal with the problem, which is that there is no supply for affordable housing in Australia for young people to get into the market in the first place.
So is this the way to fix the housing problem, or will it just make matters worse? Economics journalist Shane Wright joins us now. Welcome, Shane. Will this plan raise house prices or not?
Yes, it will. You're putting more money into the hands of about 100,000 people who will bid against each other on Saturday afternoons around suburban Australia. And as soon as you do that, you're feeding into demand, you push up prices. Like the quantum is an open question, but you've never seen a place where you've given more money to people and prices have fallen.
One thing that's interesting about this policy specifically, though, Shane, is that if you were to take your money out to spend on a house and you sell that house, you have to put the money back with the relevant proportion of capital gains. So once you think about it that way, couldn't you look at this as just another investment, right? So instead of just putting money aside for superannuation that gets invested in the share market, that money's being invested in the property market. And so it's the same as shares, except it has the benefit that you can actually live in your investment, but you're not throwing your money away, you're not losing your investment.
Yeah, and that's a fair argument to make, except how much is your house going to be worth in 10 years' time?
But how much are my shares going to be worth in 10 years? The share market's probably less reliable than housing.
If you're in superannuation with a growth fund, you've made 9.5% over the last 10 years. You have outperformed the property market by about $200,000. That's the... I know people think that house prices never go down. We are actually experiencing that right now. House prices in most cities fell slightly between 2017 and 2019. So there are all these other factors that are going on. And the issue comes to when you sell your house, you've got to put the money back, which is actually the redeeming feature of this policy. You're putting the money back into your super, plus that proportion of the capital gain. But we don't, that capital gain is what people are banking on to use their house to move into a bigger place. Maybe they've got a couple of kids, maybe they've got a dog out the back that they need a yard on. There is no idea of how this will affect that second round market once this comes into place.
So I get the idea that you could stuff up your second house, that makes sense. But we were talking about property prices going up 16% in a year last year. The market was never going to give you that. I would have thought 10 years ago, I'm surprised to hear you say the market outperformed housing. I would have thought 10 years ago, the percentage that's gone up, I'd much rather have had my money in housing than on the stock market.
Well, that's why you're a TV personality and not in the property market.
That's why you're not an economist or a real estate agent.
No, that's a very good point, which is why I'm asking you that question.
Yeah, and that's right. People think that homes are as safe as houses, but prices do vary, and we've actually seen that. You're right. say, trying to pick that the housing market in regional areas like Dubbo, Wagga, Bendigo, Ballarat, Wodonga were going to go through the roof over the last 2 years, there is no one who would have picked that, for instance. But the big caveat is that Australians are the second most indebted households in the world. We really are, like a quarter of all new home lending is now at 6 times debt to income ratios, which is, when you think about it, it's extraordinary. You go back 30 years, Australia was one of the least indebted countries in the developed world. We have piled money into the property market. You forced governments to come up with these policies which just put more money into the property system. Supply is the key issue, and that's where these programs, both Labor and the government, they're falling down in terms of getting ways to boost supply to deal with all these price pressures.
Shane, always great to speak to you, mate. Thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure, fellas.